You're probably familiar with some of the world's worst environmental disasters. The Chernobyl nuclear accident, the Exxon Valdez oil spill, even the Dust Bowl. But what about Lake Apopka? Chances are you've never heard about Lake Apopka, despite it being Florida's most polluted lake, and there's probably a reason why.
It's on purpose.
Jeannie Economos from the Florida Farm Workers Association would know.
One of my main jobs was working on Lake Apopka. And little did I know, 22 years later, I would still be doing it.
Lake Apopka has had a human presence for thousands of years and sustained both the native Timucua and Seminole tribes before colonial expansion. After armed occupation in 1842, Lake Apopka became known as an excellent fishing spot, but would come to attract more than just fishermen. In the 1940s, parts of the lake were drained to create muck farms, feeding and employing Central Florida's booming population. But by the 1950s, something was wrong. Fishermen were catching less and less fish, and the lake rapidly lost its popularity as a fishing spot, and the fishermen lost their jobs. But the agricultural industry in Apopka was booming. By the 1960s, environmental impacts became even more apparent. The chemical runoff from the farms and residences nearby had caused toxic algae bloom, throwing the lake's natural nutrient levels off, causing fish and other wildlife to migrate or die completely. In the midst of trying to clean up the lake and discussions in the state government about buying out the muck farms, the worst happened. The Tower Chemical Company, a local pesticide manufacturer, was discovered to have been improperly disposing of a dangerous amount of DDE. DDE isn't just a pesticide, it's an endocrine disruptor. And for most people who don't know what that means, it interferes with hormone systems, and it can cause cancer, birth defects, and other developmental disorders.
So when the farms first shut down, our main thing that we worked on was trying to get jobs and food and clothes and housing for people. Until the bird deaths happened in the late fall, early winter of 98, 99. And then when the bird deaths happened and they found out that it was pesticides, that's when we completely changed gears into looking at, if the birds are dying from pesticides, what about the people? And then we've been working on the health issues ever since.
At this point, most of us would have assumed that the state, local, or even federal government would have stepped in to do something.
The state, local, and federal government have done absolutely nothing. We tried 3 times to get big government grants to do blood tests, among other things, to look at the health of, to look at pesticide levels in the farm workers, and 3 times they were denied. 3 times we looked at possibly doing a class action lawsuit. 3 times it didn't work because it's really too complicated, because farm workers were exposed to multiple different kinds of pesticides. So you can't identify a pesticide and a health outcome. So it's too hard to make a legal case. Honestly, at this point, it's too late. So many people have died. So a lot of the people that, a lot of the Haitians and Hispanics moved away and are working in other places. A lot of the African Americans have died. I mean, it's over 20 years ago.
You may still feel that Lake Apopka wasn't as devastating as the ExxonMobil spill or Chernobyl or the Dust Bowl, but they all share a common denominator. They point to larger issues.
Yeah, so, there's been a trend for decades, really, where as these companies become more and more powerful, they have more political influence, so they make significant financial contributions to our elected officials and their campaigns, and so a lot of our regulatory agencies, as well as our legislators at the state and the federal level, are really beholden to the interests of these mega corporations.
Tiffany Fink Haynes works for the Friends of the Earth and spends her days battling for a cleaner and safer planet.
We have 1.7 million members and supporters across the country, and we're part of a network of 75 organizations around the world. And our mission is to champion protecting the environment in a healthy and just world. And I'm focused primarily on reducing pesticide use in our environment, and specifically in our agricultural system, and helping protect pollinators, people, and the planet, because pesticides are very toxic. It was pretty unfortunate because within just a 2-year time period, 6 of the largest agrochemical companies merged. So we went from having already a pretty consolidated and concentrated seed and pesticide market to having a monopoly, have the biggest seed portfolio and have a lock essentially on the vegetable seed market, corn and soybean seed market, and really make it almost impossible for farmers to get out of using the pesticides that they manufacture and have other options.
Lake Apopka is a part of the St. Johns River Basin, which flows through and provides water for drinking, shipping, fishing, and swimming for 18 Florida counties.
That has a ripple effect throughout our food supply chain. So that means that farmers on their farms are using them. Farm workers that are working on those farms are exposed to those toxic pesticides every day, and it means that those pesticides are ending up in our environment, contaminating our water, our soil, killing off pollinators and other critical species that we need to produce food, and then they essentially end up on our plate.
Organizations like People for the Earth and the Florida Farm Workers Association work to battle the power of the companies that don't consider the environmental and human impact of their actions. And Jeannie and Tiffany have some advice for what we as regular people can do.
The average consumer can push their elected officials to support policy change. So that means making sure that they're supporting policies that eliminate toxic pesticides and hold corporations accountable.
The main thing you can do is to keep it alive and tell the story. Because like you said, people don't know. And it's criminal.
Pushing our supermarkets to make these changes in their supply chain.
You can get involved with organizations that fight against pesticides, like us, like Pesticide Action Network, Beyond Pesticides, and let people know just how dangerous pesticides are to the farm workers, to the environment, and to all of us, because it's in our drinking water and it's on our food. So we're all exposed.
While the lake is showing some signs of recovery, the mention of pesticides in relation to the lake is rare, and discussion of the human impact on the farm workers and their families is almost non-existent. So when you're in your grocery store, at your dinner table, or even at the polls, it's time for us to start asking ourselves, what about Lake Apopka?